I was standing in my driveway at 7 in the morning, watching my 3 golden retriever puppies tumble through 8 inches of fresh snow, when I heard the shriek that would change everything. This is completely unacceptable. Those animals are destroying the aesthetic of our neighborhood. I turned to see Patricia Hendricks marching across the pristine white landscape, her perfectly highlighted blonde hair stiff against the winter wind, wearing what looked like a designer parka that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She was the head of our homeowners association in Lakewood, Colorado, and she'd made my life a living nightmare since I moved into the subdivision 6 months ago. "Morning, Patricia," I said, keeping my voice neutral. My name is Yates Vaughn, and I'd learned the hard way that engaging with Patricia only made things worse. But I wasn't about to let her ruin the one good thing I had going in my life right now. The puppies, Biscuit, Maple, and Honey, were only 4 months old and absolutely loved the snow. They were jumping and rolling, their golden fur dusted white, making those happy puppy sounds that usually made everyone smile, usually being the key word. Patricia looked like she was witnessing a crime scene. "Do not morning me, Mr. Vaughn. Your dogs are violating at least 4 HOA regulations right now. They're off leash, they're in the front yard, they're making excessive noise, and they're disturbing the snow coverage pattern that maintains our neighborhood's winter aesthetic." I blinked at her. Snow coverage pattern. They're puppies playing in snow. That's what puppies do. According to Section 7, Paragraph 3 of our HOA bylaws, any disturbance to natural weather precipitation on front lawns must be approved by the board 72 hours in advance. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. "I'm documenting this violation. You cannot be serious right now." I bent down and scooped up Biscuit, who immediately tried to lick my face, her tail wagging so hard her whole back end wiggled. "They're not hurting anything. That's not for you to decide. The HOA board determines what constitutes harm to our community standards." Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is your 3rd violation this month, Mr. Vaughn. The board will be discussing fines at our meeting tonight." My 3rd violation. The first one was for my mailbox being the wrong shade of black, and the second was for parking my truck in my own driveway. It's a commercial vehicle. Commercial vehicles are prohibited from overnight parking in residential driveways. It's a Ford F-150. Half the neighborhood drives trucks. Half the neighborhood doesn't have company logos on the side. Patricia's voice dripped with condescension. "You know the rules, Mr. Vaughn. Perhaps if you spent less time acquiring animals and more time reading your HOA documentation, we wouldn't be having these constant issues." Maple and Honey had bounded over, creating a chorus of puppy excitement at my feet. They were completely oblivious to the tension, just thrilled to be alive and in the snow. I'd gotten them after my divorce was finalized 3 months ago. My ex-wife Sarah had gotten the house in Denver, and I'd moved out here to start fresh. The puppies were supposed to be a new beginning, something positive to focus on while I rebuilt my life. "I'll take them inside," I said, not wanting to escalate. "But this is ridiculous, Patricia. They're puppies. Rules are rules." She turned on her expensive boots and marched back toward her house, which sat at the corner of our cul-de-sac like a surveillance tower. I'd noticed her curtains twitching at all hours, like she was constantly monitoring the neighborhood for infractions. I herded the puppies inside, their paws leaving wet prints across my hardwood floors. My house was still barely furnished, just the basics I'd grabbed from IKEA when I moved in. The living room had a couch, a TV on a stand, and about 50 dog toys scattered everywhere. The puppies had more stuff than I did. My phone rang while I was toweling off the dogs. It was Marcus Chen, My neighbor from 2 doors down and the only person in the subdivision who'd been genuinely friendly since I arrived. "Dude, I just saw Patricia storming away from your place." "What happened now?" The puppies were playing in the snow. "Apparently that's a violation," Marcus groaned. "She's losing it. Last week she threatened to fine me because my daughter drew a hopscotch grid on our driveway with chalk, said it was unauthorized ground art." "How is she still in charge? Doesn't anyone vote her out?" "She's got her little group of supporters and most people are too scared to stand up to her. She's been HOA president for 6 years. The woman lives for this stuff." Marcus paused. "Listen, the board meeting is tonight at 7. You should come. She's going to bring up your violations and you should defend yourself." "Will it make any difference?" "Probably not, but at least you'll be on record. Plus, free terrible coffee and stale cookies." I agreed to go, though the idea of spending my evening in a confrontation with Patricia made my stomach hurt. After I hung up, I fed the puppies and got ready for work. I ran a small landscaping business that I'd started 2 years ago, right before everything with Sarah fell apart. Winter was slow season, but I had some snow removal contracts and indoor consultations to keep money coming in. The day dragged on. I met with a client in Boulder who wanted a complete backyard renovation in the spring, cleared snow from a parking lot in Golden, and tried not to think about the evening ahead. When I got home around 5, the puppies were ecstatic to see me, which immediately improved my mood. We went out to the backyard, which was fenced, and therefore HOA approved for dog activity, and played until it was time to get ready for the meeting. The HOA meeting was held at the subdivision's community center, a small building near the entrance that mostly sat empty except for these monthly gatherings. When I walked in at 7, about 20 people were already seated in folding chairs. Patricia stood at the front with her board members. Gary Whitmore, a retired accountant who seemed to agree with everything Patricia said. Brenda Sheffield, a nervous woman in her 50s who rarely spoke, and Tom Harrison, who at least occasionally pushed back on Patricia's more extreme ideas. Marcus waved me over to a seat he'd saved. "Buckle up," he whispered. "She's already on a rampage." Opened the meeting by announcing 3 new violations for people having Christmas lights up past January 10th. Patricia called the meeting to order, going through standard business about Treasury reports and upcoming landscaping bids for the common areas. Then she got to violations. "We have a serious issue with repeat offenders in our community," she began, her eyes finding me in the crowd. "Mr. Yates Vaughn, who resides at 847 Meadowbrook Lane, has accumulated 3 violations in the past month alone. This demonstrates a blatant disregard for the standards we've all agreed to uphold." "I didn't agree to anything," I said, standing up. "I bought a house. These rules are insane." "You signed the HOA agreement at closing," Patricia shot back. "Ignorance is not an excuse." "I'm not ignorant. I'm saying the rules are unreasonable. You want to fine me because my puppies played in the snow." A few people murmured in agreement, which seemed to irritate Patricia. "The rules exist to maintain property values and community standards. If we allow one person to flagrantly violate them, it opens the door for chaos." She pulled up the photos she'd taken that morning on a projector screen. The puppies looked absolutely adorable, tumbling through the snow. Several people in the audience actually said "Awa." Those dogs were unleashed in the front yard, creating a disturbance and damaging the natural snowfall aesthetic that, "Oh, come on, Patricia." This came from Denise Martinez, who lived on the other side of Marcus. "They're puppies. My kids play in the snow all the time. Children are different from animals." "How? They make the same mess." Denise stood up. "I'm tired of this. You fine people for everything. My husband got a violation for having his gym bag visible through our car window. A gym bag. The meeting devolved quickly. It turned out a lot of people had grievances they'd been holding back. Patricia tried to maintain control, banging a gavel she'd brought for exactly this purpose, but the crowd wasn't having it. "I move that we vote on reducing the number of violation categories," Tom Harrison said, and several people seconded it. Patricia's face went red. "That's not on tonight's agenda. We can't vote on items that aren't on the agenda." Actually, Tom pulled out his own copy of the HOA bylaws. According to Section 12, any board member can call for an emergency vote if seconded by at least 5 homeowners. At least 10 hands went up. What followed was an hour of heated debate. Patricia kept trying to shut down the discussion, but she was outnumbered. Finally, a vote was called. The motion to review and reduce violation categories passed 18-7. Patricia looked like she wanted to flip the table. "Fine," she said through clenched teeth. "We'll review the bylaws. But existing violations still stand. Mr. Vaughn, you owe $450 in fines." "For what?" "Playing with my dogs, $150 per violation. Pay within 30 days or we'll place a lien on your property." I felt my temper rising. "You know what? No, I'm not paying." "Take me to court." Marcus grabbed my arm. "Dude, maybe don't know I'm done. This is extortion. She's using the HOA like her personal kingdom and I'm not playing along anymore." Patricia's smile was cold. "Very well. The HOA has the legal right to pursue collections. You'll be hearing from our attorney." I left the meeting furious, with Marcus jogging to catch up with me in the parking lot. "That was either really brave or really stupid," he said. "Probably stupid. But I meant it. I'm not giving her money for made-up violations. She's going to make your life hell. More than she already has." Marcus didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, I woke up to all 3 puppies barking at the front window. I stumbled out of bed to see what the commotion was about and found Patricia in my front yard again, this time with a clipboard and a measuring tape. She was documenting something, taking measurements of my lawn. I threw on jeans and a hoodie and went outside. "What are you doing?" "Measuring the depth of snow disturbance from yesterday. For the violation report." "You're kidding." "I never kid about HOA business, Mr. Vaughn." She made notes on her clipboard. "I'm also documenting that your dogs are barking excessively. That's another violation." "They're barking because a stranger is in our yard. Noise ordinance violations apply regardless of cause." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Just so we're clear, you're trespassing on my property to manufacture HOA violations." Patricia straightened up, suddenly aware she might be in the wrong. "I have the right to document violations on any HOA property." "You have the right to observe from the street. You don't have the right to be in my yard without permission. The HOA bylaws don't override property law." "Get off my lawn, Patricia." We stared at each other for a long moment. The puppies had stopped barking and were now watching through the window, their tails wagging because they had no concept of social conflict. Finally, Patricia turned and walked back to the sidewalk. "You're making a big mistake, Mr. Vaughn. The HOA always wins." "We'll see about that." After she left, I called Tom Harrison. He was the only board member who seemed halfway reasonable, and I figured he might have advice on how to handle this situation. "Yates, look, I sympathize," Tom said when I explained what happened. "But Patricia has the board majority. Gary agrees with everything she says and Brenda's too scared to vote against her. I'm outnumbered 3-1. So what do I do? Just let her run my life? You could run for the board. We have elections in April. If you could get enough people to vote out Patricia or Gary, you'd have a shot at changing things. That's 3 months away. She's threatening to put a lien on my house. She's bluffing. The lien process takes months, and she'd have to prove the violations are legitimate. Most judges don't look kindly on HOAs that overreach." Tom paused. "But you should probably get a lawyer just in case. I can recommend someone who specializes in HOA disputes." I took down the information, feeling the weight of the situation settling on my shoulders. This was supposed to be my fresh start, my chance to rebuild after the divorce. Instead, I was heading toward another legal battle. The rest of January passed in an increasingly absurd escalation. Patricia started showing up at random times to document violations. My grass was too long under the snow. My trash cans were visible from the street for 6 minutes past the allowed time. My truck was parked 3 inches over the property line into my own driveway. Each violation came with a fine. I refused to pay any of them and started documenting everything myself. I set up a camera by my front door to record her visits. I kept detailed logs of times and dates, and I started talking to other neighbors, building a coalition of people who were fed up with Patricia's reign. It turned out there were a lot of us. The Martineses had over $2,000 in unpaid fines for various ridiculous violations. Old Mr. Peterson had been cited for having a flag that was 2 inches too large. The Johnsons got fined because their teenage son's car was too sporty for the neighborhood aesthetic. We formed a group chat and started planning. If we could get enough people to run for board positions and vote as a bloc, we could overthrow Patricia's regime. It felt weirdly revolutionary for a suburban HOA dispute, but everyone was motivated. Meanwhile, the puppies kept growing. By early February, they'd gone from tiny furballs to lanky adolescents who still thought they were lap dogs. They brought me constant joy during an otherwise stressful time. Every evening when I came home, they'd greet me like I'd been gone for years, tumbling over each other in their excitement. We'd go to the backyard and play fetch until it got dark, and I'd forget about HOA drama for a little while. The first week of February brought another massive snowstorm. Colorado was used to snow, but this was a lot even for us. Schools closed, roads were a mess, and the subdivision was buried under 18 inches of powder. I spent the day running my snow removal business, making good money clearing parking lots and driveways. When I finally got home around 6 in the evening, exhausted and cold, I let the puppies out into the backyard. They went absolutely berserk, leaping through snow that was almost as deep as they were tall. I laughed, watching them, and decided to join them in the front yard where the snow was pristine and beautiful in the glow of the streetlights. We were out there for maybe 10 minutes, the puppies racing in circles while I threw snowballs for them to chase, when Patricia's porch light flipped on. I saw her silhouette in the window and knew what was coming. Sure enough, 2 minutes later she was marching across the street, wearing her expensive parka and rain boots that probably cost $300. "Mr. Vaughn, this is completely unacceptable, Patricia. It's a snow day. We're playing in the snow. Your animals are destroying the pristine snowfall. Do you have any idea how this looks? It looks like puppies having fun. It looks like chaos. I'm calling the police." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You're going to call the police because my dogs are playing in snow. You're creating a public disturbance. Your animals are unleashed, and you're being hostile and threatening toward an HOA official." "I haven't threatened anyone, Patricia. You're being ridiculous." "We'll see what the police have to say about that." She pulled out her phone and started dialing. I probably should have taken the puppies inside, but I was done backing down. If she wanted to waste police resources on this nonsense, fine. Let the cops tell her she was being absurd. Biscuit, Maple, and Honey were oblivious to the drama, still romping through the snow. Maple found a stick and was parading around with it like she'd won a prize. Honey was trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. Biscuit was digging a hole for no apparent reason other than the joy of digging. A Lakewood Police Department cruiser pulled up about 15 minutes later. A young officer stepped out, probably in his late 20s, looking like he was wondering what he'd done to deserve this call. He had dark hair, a friendly face, and his name tag read Officer Chen. Patricia immediately rushed over to him. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. This man has been harassing me and letting his animals run wild in violation of multiple HOA regulations and city ordinances." Officer Chen looked at me, then at the puppies, then back at Patricia. "Madam, what exactly is the complaint?" "His dogs are unleashed in the front yard, creating a disturbance, and he's been verbally aggressive toward me when I attempted to enforce our community standards." The officer walked over to me. The puppies, being puppies, immediately swarmed him with enthusiasm. Biscuit jumped up, putting her paws on his leg. Maple dropped her stick at his feet. Honey just sat down and wagged her tail so hard she was making snow angels. These are the dangerous animals. Officer Chen asked, trying to maintain a professional demeanor while Biscuit licked his hand. "They're puppies," I said. "We were playing in the snow, that's literally it. Are they up to date on vaccinations?" "Yes, sir, I can show you the paperwork." "Are they aggressive?" "The most aggressive thing they do is aggressively cuddle." Officer Chen cracked a small smile. "And the leash situation? We're in my front yard. I know the city leash law applies to public spaces, but this is my property." "Actually, he's correct about that," Officer Chen said, turning to Patricia. "On private property, owners have discretion about leashing unless the animal poses a danger." Patricia's face flushed. "But the HOA regulations, madam, I can't enforce HOA regulations. That's a civil matter. If there's no crime being committed, I can't take action." He was being threatening. "What did he say that was threatening?" Patricia sputtered for a moment. "He told me I was being ridiculous." "That's not a threat, madam. That's an opinion." Officer Chen bent down to pet Maple, who had decided he was her new best friend. "These are good dogs. What breed are they?" "Golden retrievers. They're 4 months old." "My girlfriend has been wanting to get a golden." "Where'd you get them?" "A breeder in Fort Collins. Mountain View Goldens." "They were great to work with." Patricia made an exasperated noise. "Officer, are you going to do anything about this situation?" "There's no situation, madam. No laws are being broken. I'd suggest you work out your HOA dispute through proper civil channels." He stood up, brushing snow off his uniform. "Mr. Vaughn, just keep an eye on the dogs when they're out front. Even though it's your property, if they were to run into the street, that could be an issue." "Absolutely. They're still learning boundaries." Officer Chen nodded, then looked back at the puppies. Honey had rolled onto her back in the snow, tongue hanging out, looking absolutely blissful. "I have to ask, is there any chance I could get that breeder's contact info? And maybe, could I come by sometime and meet them properly? My girlfriend's birthday is next month, and I've been thinking about surprising her with a puppy." I grinned. "Absolutely. Give me your number and I'll text you the breeder information, and you're welcome to visit the puppies anytime. They love meeting new people." We exchanged numbers while Patricia stood there, practically vibrating with fury. Officer Chen gave her a polite nod, told me to have a good evening, and headed back to his cruiser. The moment he drove away, Patricia turned on me. "You think this is over? You think because you charmed one police officer that you've won?" "Patricia, I'm not trying to win anything. I just want to live my life and raise my dogs in peace. You signed an agreement when you moved here. You agreed to follow the rules. And you're abusing your position to harass people. When's the last time you find anyone in your little inner circle? Because I've noticed Gary has had his Christmas lights up until last week, past your January 10th deadline, and I didn't see any violation notices." Patricia's jaw clenched. "That's different." "How? How is it different?" "Gary is a valued member of the board. He contributes to this community. So the rules only apply to people you don't like. That's called selective enforcement, Patricia, and it's illegal. You have no idea what you're talking about." "Actually, I do. I've been reading up on HOA law. I've talked to a lawyer, and I'm gathering evidence of your selective enforcement patterns. So maybe you should think carefully about how you proceed." I called the puppies and headed inside, leaving Patricia standing in the snow. My heart was pounding, but I felt good. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I had some power in the situation. The story about the police visit spread through the neighborhood by the next morning. Marcus called me at 8, laughing so hard he could barely talk. "Dude, Denise told me the cop wanted to book a puppy visit. That's the best thing I've heard all year." Patricia looked like she was going to explode. "I bet. She tried to weaponize the police against you and it completely backfired." Marcus paused. "Listen, a bunch of us are meeting at my place tomorrow night to talk strategy for the April elections. You should come." The meeting at Marcus's house turned into a full-blown planning session. 12 people showed up, all with stories about Patricia's overreach. We mapped out a strategy. Tom would run for president again, I'd run for Gary's board seat, and Denise would run for Brenda's seat. If we all won, we'd have a 3-to-1 majority to reform the HOA. But we had to make it to April 1st. February continued with Patricia's harassment campaign. She sent me violation notices almost daily. My doormat was the wrong color. My house numbers were too large. My mailbox had a minor scratch that detracted from neighborhood aesthetics. Each notice came with a fine ranging from $100 to $300. I didn't pay any of them, and my folder of evidence kept growing. I documented every interaction, every inconsistency in her enforcement. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Rebecca Torres who specialized in HOA cases, assured me we had a solid case if Patricia tried to place a lien on my house. "She's creating a paper trail that proves selective enforcement and harassment," Rebecca explained during a consultation in mid-February. "If this goes to court, which I doubt it will, you'll win easily. Most judges are sick of HOA overreach cases. So I just wait her out." Wait her out, document everything, and win the election. Once you have board control, you can reform the bylaws and make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Officer Chen, whose first name I learned was David, came by one Saturday afternoon to meet the puppies properly. He brought his girlfriend Amy, a kindergarten teacher with a bright smile and an obvious love for dogs. The puppies went crazy when they arrived, and we spent an hour in the backyard just playing. "They're perfect," Amy said, laughing as Honey tried to climb into her lap. "Did you train them, or are they naturally this friendly?" "Goldens are pretty naturally friendly, but we've been working on basic obedience. Sit, stay, come. They're getting better at it." David threw a tennis ball for Biscuit. "I talked to the breeder you recommended. They have a litter due in March. We're on the waiting list." "That's great. Fair warning, though, puppies are a lot of work." "Worth it, though, right?" Amy was rubbing Maple's belly. "Completely worth it. We talked for a while about dog training, about the neighborhood, about life in general. David mentioned he'd grown up in Lakewood, that he'd become a cop because he genuinely wanted to help people. He seemed like a good guy, and I was glad the ridiculous call from Patricia had led to a new friendship. As they were leaving, David mentioned something that caught my attention. "Hey, just a heads up. Your HOA president has been calling the station pretty regularly about various things in the neighborhood. Noise complaints, parking issues, suspicious activity. Most of it doesn't pan out. Suspicious activity. Yeah, last week she reported that someone was casing houses because a car she didn't recognize was parked on the street for 3 hours. Turned out it was someone visiting the Hendersons. She's getting a reputation at the station. Is that going to be a problem for her? Filing false reports can be if it becomes a pattern. We're documenting the calls. David shrugged. Just thought you should know she's not just focused on you. She's calling us about everything. After they left, I thought about that. Patricia wasn't just drunk on HOA power. She was escalating, trying to use any authority she could access to control the neighborhood. It was concerning. March came in like a lion, with another big snowstorm that shut down the city for 2 days. I made good money with snow removal, and the puppies had the time of their lives. They were getting bigger, more coordinated, and even more affectionate. Biscuit had become my shadow, following me everywhere. Maple was the troublemaker, always finding something she shouldn't have. And Honey was the gentle soul who just wanted everyone to be happy. The election was 6 weeks away, and our campaign was gaining momentum. Tom had created flyers outlining his platform, reducing violation categories, implementing fair enforcement standards, and making the board more transparent. Denise and I had similar messages. We went door to door talking to neighbors, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Patricia, of course, fought back. She sent out her own mailers, warning that radical elements were trying to destroy the community. She claimed that reducing HOA standards would tank property values and lead to chaos. Her flyers featured photos of run-down neighborhoods that definitely weren't anywhere near Lakewood, with captions like, "Is this what you want for your community?" It was absurd, but it was also concerning. Fear tactics worked, and Patricia knew that. The week before the election, things got nasty. Someone left a dead bird on Tom's doorstep with a note that said, "Traitor." Denise's car got keyed in her driveway. And I came home one evening to find my trash cans overturned, garbage strewn across my lawn, and a violation notice from Patricia citing me for improper waste management. I had security camera footage showing someone in a black hoodie dumping my trash at 2 in the morning. You couldn't see their face, but the timing was suspicious. I filed a police report, and David was the responding officer. "This is getting out of hand," he said, reviewing the footage. "Do you think it's your HOA president? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe one of her supporters. I'll write this up as vandalism. Keep your cameras rolling." David looked at the puppies, who were watching curiously from the window. "How are the troublemakers doing? Growing like weeds. How's your puppy search? We're picking up our golden next week. I'm so excited I can barely stand it." Get ready for zero sleep and constant chaos. Can't wait. The election was held on a Tuesday evening in the community center. The turnout was massive, way higher than typical HOA elections. Patricia stood near the entrance, greeting people with a fake smile and handing out last-minute campaign materials for her slate of candidates. When the results were counted, the room erupted. Tom won the presidency by a landslide. I won Gary's seat with 62% of the vote. Denise won Brenda's seat with 58%. We had our majority. Patricia's face went through several shades of red before settling on a furious purple. This election was illegitimate. There were irregularities. "What irregularities?" Tom asked calmly. "People who don't usually attend voted. That's called democracy, Patricia. They're homeowners. They have the right to vote. I demand a recount. You can demand whatever you want. The bylaws are clear on election procedures, and everything was done correctly." Tom turned to the room. "Thank you all for participating. The new board will meet next week to begin working on bylaw reforms." Patricia stormed out, her small group of supporters trailing behind her. The rest of us celebrated like we'd won a war. In a way, we had. The next morning, I was awakened by frantic barking from the puppies. I rushed to the front window and saw smoke. Patricia's house was on fire. I grabbed my phone and called 911 while running outside. Flames were coming from her garage, black smoke billowing into the morning sky. Other neighbors were emerging from their houses, and someone shouted that Patricia's car was still in the driveway, that she might be home. Marcus ran over with a fire extinguisher, but the fire was already too big. We could hear sirens approaching. I grabbed the puppies' leashes from inside and brought them out to the backyard, not wanting them near the chaos. Fire trucks arrived, then ambulances, then police cars. The firefighters got the blaze under control within 20 minutes, but Patricia's garage was destroyed, and the house had significant damage. Paramedics brought Patricia out on a stretcher. She looked shaken but conscious. David was one of the responding officers. He took statements from everyone who'd been outside. When he got to me, his expression was serious. "When did you first notice the fire?" "My dogs woke me up barking around 6:15. I looked out and saw the smoke." "Did you see anyone near the house before that?" "No." "Why?" "Fire investigator says it looks suspicious. There's evidence of accelerant." My stomach dropped. "You think someone started it?" "We're investigating all possibilities." David glanced toward Patricia's house, where investigators were already combing through the wreckage. "Given the tensions in the neighborhood lately, we have to consider everything." Over the next few days, the truth came out. The fire had been intentionally set, but not by who anyone expected. Gary Whitmore, Patricia's loyal board supporter, had done it. He'd apparently been embezzling HOA funds for the past 3 years, falsifying records and funneling money into a secret account. With the new board about to take over and review the financial records, he'd panicked. His plan had been to burn Patricia's house and make it look like angry homeowners had retaliated after the election, creating chaos and distraction. What he hadn't counted on was Patricia's home security system, which captured footage of him in her driveway at 5 in the morning, carrying a gas can. The police arrested Gary 2 days after the fire. The evidence was overwhelming. He confessed to arson and embezzlement, claiming Patricia had been pressuring him to find more money for HOA projects, that he'd felt he had no choice. It was a weak excuse that no one believed. The revelation sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. An emergency HOA meeting was called, and a forensic accountant was hired to review the books. It turned out Gary had stolen over $70,000 over 3 years, using it to pay off personal debts and fund a gambling habit no one knew he had. Patricia, recovering at her sister's house from smoke inhalation, released a statement claiming she'd had no knowledge of the embezzlement. The investigation seemed to support that. She'd been a tyrant with the rules, but she hadn't been stealing. Gary had used her obsessive documentation and micromanagement as cover for his crimes, knowing she was too focused on violations to properly review his financial reports. The new board's first order of business was pressing charges and working with authorities to recover as much of the stolen money as possible. Our second order was beginning the bylaw reform we'd promised. We held a series of community meetings, getting input from homeowners about what rules made sense and what was overreach. We reduced the violation categories from 47 to 12, focusing on things that genuinely affected safety and property values. We eliminated ridiculous rules about snow disturbance, grass height in winter, and parking restrictions for non-commercial vehicles. We implemented a 3-strike system with warnings before fines, and we established an appeal process so homeowners could contest violations they felt were unfair. We also implemented financial oversight measures to prevent future embezzlement, including quarterly independent audits and requiring board approval for any expenditure over $500. Patricia quietly resigned from the board in May. Her house was being rebuilt by insurance, but she seemed to have lost her appetite for HOA combat. I saw her occasionally, and we'd exchange polite nods but nothing more. I think the fire had shaken her, made her realize how out of control things had gotten. David and Amy got their golden retriever puppy in April, a little girl they named Sunny. We started having regular puppy playdates at a local park, and watching the 4 dogs romp around together was pure joy. David turned out to be a great dog dad, patient and loving with Sunny even when she chewed up his favorite shoes. "I get why you were so defensive about your dogs now," David said one Saturday while we watched the puppies play. "They're family. They saved me, honestly. After my divorce, I was pretty lost. These guys gave me purpose." Amy says the same thing about Sunny. She comes home from teaching, and even if it was a tough day, Sunny makes everything better. By June, life in the subdivision had settled into something resembling normal. The bylaw reforms were in place. People weren't living in fear of ridiculous violations, and the community actually felt like a community rather than a police state. We had a neighborhood barbecue in early June, the first social event that wasn't an HOA meeting in years. Kids played, dogs romped, and people actually enjoyed being together. Marcus manned the grill, flipping burgers while his daughter played with the puppies. "Remember when you were ready to burn it all down and move?" I seriously considered it. Found myself looking at houses in other areas. "Glad you stayed and fought instead. You changed this place." "We all did. It wasn't just me." "You stood up first, though. That matters." Biscuit ran over with a tennis ball, dropped it at my feet, and looked up with those soulful golden eyes. I threw it, and she raced off, Maple and Honey chasing after her. They'd grown so much in the past few months, from tiny puppies to lanky adolescents who still had their puppy energy, but were starting to show the calmer temperament Goldens were known for. My landscaping business was thriving. Word had spread about the HOA situation, and I'd gotten several new clients who specifically wanted to hire someone who'd stood up to bureaucratic nonsense. I was booked solid through the summer with design and installation projects. The subdivision felt different now. People talked to each other, waved when they drove by, actually seemed to care about building relationships rather than just enforcing rules. Property values hadn't tanked like Patricia had predicted. If anything, they'd gone up slightly because people actually wanted to live in a neighborhood that wasn't run like a dictatorship. Tom turned out to be an excellent HOA president, running meetings efficiently and fairly. Denise brought creative ideas for community events. And I focused on the landscaping side, helping design improvements for common areas that looked great without breaking the budget. The criminal case against Gary moved through the courts over the summer. He pled guilty to arson and embezzlement in July, accepting a plea deal that would send him to prison for 6 years and require him to pay restitution. The HOA recovered about $30,000 from his accounts, and his house was foreclosed on to pay additional restitution. It was a sad ending for someone who'd seemed like a normal guy, but it was also a reminder of what could happen when systems lacked oversight and accountability. In August, David and Amy got engaged. They had a party to celebrate, and of course, the 4 golden retrievers were invited. Watching Sunny play with Biscuit, Maple, and Honey, seeing how happy David and Amy were together, I felt grateful for how things had turned out. A ridiculous complaint about puppies in snow had led to friendship, to community change, to something genuinely good. Sarah, my ex-wife, texted me in September. We'd barely spoken since the divorce was finalized, but she'd heard through mutual friends about the HOA situation and wanted to reach out. I heard you took down a corrupt HOA board and made friends with a cop who wanted to book a puppy visit. That sounds like the most you story ever, her text read. I smiled and wrote back. Life got interesting. How are you? We texted back and forth a bit, catching up. She was dating someone new, seemed happy. I told her about the puppies, about the business, about the neighborhood changes. It was civil and pleasant, the way things should be between exes who just weren't right for each other. I'm glad you're doing well, she wrote. The puppies sound amazing. Send pictures. I sent photos of Biscuit, Maple, and Honey, now almost a year old and absolutely gorgeous. Sarah responded with heart emojis and said they were beautiful, that I'd always been better with dogs than she was. It felt like closure, that conversation. We'd both moved on, built new lives, found happiness in different ways. The divorce had hurt at the time, but looking back, it had pushed me toward something better. October brought cooler weather and the first hints of fall color in the Colorado mountains. I took the dogs hiking most weekends, exploring trails around Lakewood and Golden, letting them swim in creeks and chase sticks through aspen groves. They were in heaven, and honestly, so was I. The HOA held its annual budget meeting in October, and for the first time in years, it was drama-free. We presented a balanced budget with reasonable dues, no surprise assessments, and transparent explanations for every expense. Homeowners actually applauded at the end. Remember when these meetings felt like going to war? Marcus whispered. I try not to, I whispered back. Patricia attended the meeting, sitting quietly in the back. When it ended, she approached me hesitantly. Mr. Vaughn, Yates, could I speak with you for a moment? Sure. We stepped outside and Patricia took a breath. I want to apologize for how I treated you, for all of it. I was so focused on control, on rules, on maintaining some perfect version of what I thought the neighborhood should be, that I lost sight of the fact that we're all just people trying to live our lives. I was stunned. I appreciate that, Patricia. That takes courage to say. The fire was a wake-up call, and then finding out about Gary, realizing that my focus on minor violations had blinded me to actual criminal activity happening right under my nose. She shook her head. I'm selling the house, moving to Arizona to be near my sister. But I wanted to apologize before I left. I hope Arizona is good to you. Fresh starts can be really healing. That's what I'm hoping for. Patricia smiled, a real smile this time, not the tight-lipped grimace I was used to. Your dogs are beautiful, by the way. I see you hiking them sometimes. They look happy. They are. They're good dogs. I'm sure they are. Patricia left after that, and I never saw her again. I heard from neighbors that she moved in early November, that her rebuilt house sold quickly to a young family with 3 kids who immediately turned the front yard into a playground. Thanksgiving came, and I hosted dinner at my house for the first time. David and Amy came, along with Marcus and his family, Denise and her husband, Tom and his wife. We crammed around my dining table, the 4 golden retrievers lounging hopefully nearby in case anyone dropped food. I want to propose a toast, Tom said, raising his glass. To Yates, who refused to be bullied and ended up changing an entire community, and to his dogs, who started this whole thing by having the audacity to play in snow. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. Biscuit chose that moment to let out a small woof, like she was toasting too, which made everyone laugh harder. To stubborn people and happy puppies, Marcus added. To standing up for what's right, Denise said. To friends who become family, Amy added, reaching over to squeeze David's hand. I looked around the table at these people who'd become so important to me, at the dogs who'd brought such joy into my life, at the home I'd fought to make truly mine. A year ago, I'd been freshly divorced, moving into a new house, just trying to survive. Now I had community, purpose, and genuine happiness. To second chances, I said, and everyone drank to that. December brought snow again, and the first storm of the season had the puppies losing their minds with excitement. They were full-grown now, 70 pounds each of pure enthusiasm and affection. We went out to the front yard, and they raced through the snow just like they had almost exactly a year ago. I thought about Patricia's complaint, about the police visit, about Officer David Chen asking if he could book a puppy visit. Such a small moment that had led to such big changes. Friendship, community reform, justice for embezzlement, and a complete transformation of how our HOA operated. Marcus came out with his daughter and their new puppy, a chocolate lab named Moose. David and Amy drove up with Sonny. Soon there were 7 dogs and a dozen people in the front yard, having a snowball fight and watching the dogs play. No one complained about disturbed snow. No one measured anything. No one threatened fines. People just lived and played and enjoyed a winter evening in Colorado. That night, after everyone had gone home and the dogs were passed out in a puppy pile on my living room floor, I sat on the couch with a beer and reflected on the past year. It had been hard sometimes, frustrating and infuriating and stressful. But it had also been transformative. I'd learned that standing up to bullies mattered, even when it was scary. I'd learned that community was built through genuine connection, not rigid enforcement of arbitrary rules. I'd learned that sometimes the best things in life come from refusing to back down, even when the fight seems pointless. And I'd learned that puppies playing in snow could change everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Torres, my HOA attorney. Saw you were featured in that article about HOA reform. Well done. You're going to inspire a lot of people to stand up to their own boards. I hadn't known about any article, so I Googled it. Sure enough, a local news outlet had written a piece about our subdivision's transformation, calling it a case study in community-driven HOA reform. They'd interviewed Tom, Denise, and several other homeowners. There was even a photo of me with the dogs. The comments section was full of people sharing their own HOA horror stories and expressing hope that change was possible in their communities too. It felt good to know that our struggle might help others. As winter deepened and the holidays approached, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work was steady, friends were close, and the dogs were thriving. I'd started dating someone I met through a client, a veterinary tech named Lisa who loved dogs as much as I did. It was early stages, nothing serious yet, but it felt promising. On Christmas Eve, I took the dogs for a late-night walk through the subdivision. The houses were decorated with lights, snow blanketed everything, and it was quiet and peaceful. We walked past Patricia's old house, where the new family had put up an inflatable Santa and dozens of colorful lights. We walked past Marcus's place, where I could see them through the window, wrapping presents. We walked past Tom's house, past Denise's house, past all the homes where people I now considered friends lived their lives. A year ago, this place had felt like enemy territory. Now it felt like home. Biscuit nudged my hand with her nose, bringing me back to the present. I scratched her ears and she leaned against my leg. Content. Maple and Honey were sniffing something fascinating in a snowbank, their tails wagging. Good girls, I said softly. You have no idea how much you changed everything. They didn't, of course. They were just dogs being dogs, living in the moment, finding joy in simple things like walks and snow and being together. But that was part of their magic. They'd reminded everyone in the subdivision what actually mattered. Not perfect lawns or matching mailboxes or pristine snow coverage. Not rigid rules or power trips or fear-based compliance. But connection, joy, compassion, and the freedom to just live without constantly looking over your shoulder. We walked home through the quiet streets, my 3 golden retrievers and me, and I felt more at peace than I had in years. The HOA drama was behind us. The community was healed. Justice had been served, and the puppies who'd started it all by playing in snow were happy, healthy, and loved. Sometimes the best revenge against petty tyranny isn't revenge at all. It's building something better. It's standing firm in who you are and what matters to you. It's refusing to let bureaucrats and bullies steal your joy. And sometimes, when you take that stand, you don't just change your own life. You change an entire community. Back home, I made hot chocolate and settled on the couch. The dogs arranged themselves around me, Biscuit with her head on my lap, Maple stretched across my feet, Honey wedged between me and the couch cushions. We sat like that for a long time, watching the lights on my Christmas tree twinkle, listening to the quiet tick of the house settling. My phone buzzed one more time. It was David, sending a photo of Sonny wearing reindeer antlers, looking absolutely ridiculous and adorable. The caption read, "Thanks for the breeder recommendation. Best decision we ever made." I smiled and sent back a photo of my 3 dogs in their Christmas bandanas. "Thanks for not arresting me when Patricia called in her complaint. Best outcome I could have hoped for. Anytime you need someone to book a puppy visit, I'm your guy." I laughed out loud, startling Honey, who gave me a confused look before settling back down. That phrase, "book a puppy visit," had become a running joke between us, but it also represented something real. It represented choosing kindness over enforcement, connection over protocol, and joy over rigidity. Officer David Chen could have shown up that snowy February evening and taken Patricia's side. He could have issued warnings or citations, could have made my life harder just because technically he had the authority to do so. Instead, he'd seen the situation for what it was, a ridiculous complaint about puppies being puppies, and had chosen humanity over bureaucracy. That one choice had rippled outward in ways neither of us could have predicted. It had led to friendship, to him and Amy getting Sonny, to our regular playdates and barbecues, and the genuine connection that made life richer. Small moments of choosing right over easy, of being reasonable rather than rigid. Those moments mattered more than people realized. As Christmas Day dawned, I woke up to 3 golden retrievers kissing my face, their morning enthusiasm undimmed by the fact that they did this every single day. I laughed and pushed them away gently, getting up to let them out and start coffee. The subdivision was quiet on Christmas morning, everyone inside with their families. I thought about inviting people over later, maybe doing a casual dinner thing, but decided against it. Today felt like a day to be still, to be grateful, to simply enjoy the peace I'd fought for. I called my parents in Wyoming, talked to my sister in Montana, exchanged Merry Christmas texts with friends. Lisa sent a sweet message with a photo of her own dog, a senior pit bull mix named Roger. We'd made plans to get together the day after Christmas, to take all the dogs hiking if the weather cooperated. Life was good. Simple, but good. And after the chaos of the past year, simple felt like a gift. The dogs got new toys for Christmas, which they destroyed with enthusiastic efficiency within hours. I got them upgraded beds, better leashes, and way too many treats. They got me unconditional love, constant companionship, and a reason to get up every morning with purpose. Fair trade, I thought, watching them play tug of war with a rope toy. As the year wound down toward New Year's, I found myself reflecting a lot on the journey. From those first violation notices that had seemed so absurd, through the escalating conflict with Patricia, the revelation of Gary's crimes, the fire, the election, the transformation of the entire HOA structure. It had been a wild ride, but the most important part wasn't the drama or the victory. It was what came after. The community that formed when people stopped being afraid. The friendships that developed when connection replaced conflict. The freedom everyone felt to just be themselves without fear of being fined for living. The new year came in quietly. I spent it with David, Amy, Marcus, and a few other neighbors, watching fireworks from Marcus's backyard while the dogs huddled nervously inside, not fans of the loud noises. We toasted to the new year, to new beginnings, to the lessons we'd learned. To a boring year, Marcus joked. I've had enough excitement. I'll drink to that, I said, and we all laughed. But I knew the truth. Life was never really boring when you had dogs, when you had friends, when you had a community you cared about. There would be new challenges, new adventures, new moments that tested you and shaped you. The difference was facing them with support instead of facing them alone. Having people who had your back instead of people trying to tear you down. Building something instead of just defending against attacks. January rolled on, bringing us back to the anniversary of when this had all started. Exactly 1 year since Patricia had first complained about my dogs in the snow. I marked the occasion by taking Biscuit, Maple, and Honey to that exact spot in the front yard and letting them play for hours. No one complained. No one measured anything. No one called the police. The neighborhood had healed, and that healing felt permanent. Not because problems would never arise again, but because we'd built systems and relationships that could handle problems without destroying each other in the process. That evening, I sat down and wrote a long post for the neighborhood's social media group, something I'd been thinking about for a while. A year ago today, I was cited for an HOA violation because my puppies were playing in snow. That moment started a chain of events that transformed our community. We uncovered embezzlement, survived arson, reformed our HOA structure, and built genuine connections with each other. I'm grateful for all of it, even the hard parts, because they led us here. To everyone who stood up, who voted, who fought for change, thank you. To everyone who's new to the neighborhood, welcome to a community that actually cares about people over rules. And to Patricia, wherever you are, I hope you've found peace. We have. The responses came in quickly, dozens of people sharing their own reflections on the year. The post got shared to other HOA reform groups, sparking conversations about how communities could change when people stood together. It felt full circle. From one man with 3 puppies facing down an unreasonable HOA president, to a movement that had inspired others to demand better from their own associations. I never set out to be some kind of HOA reform hero. I just wanted to play with my dogs in the snow without being harassed. But sometimes standing up for simple things leads to bigger changes. Sometimes refusing to accept unreasonable treatment opens doors for everyone else to do the same. And sometimes, just sometimes, a police officer shows up to a ridiculous complaint about puppies and asks if he can book a puppy visit instead of enforcing tyranny. Those moments matter. They're the moments when humanity wins over bureaucracy, when common sense prevails over rigid rule following, when people choose connection over control. As I finished writing this reflection, the 3 dogs who'd started everything were asleep at my feet, completely unaware of their role in neighborhood history. They were just happy dogs living happy dog lives, which was exactly as it should be. The fight had been worth it. The stress, the confrontation, the uncertainty, all of it had been worth it to create a community where people could live freely. where dogs could play in snow without triggering violations, where common sense and human decency trumped arbitrary rules. I looked at Biscuit, Maple, and Honey, these three golden retrievers who changed everything just by being themselves, and felt overwhelmingly grateful. For them, for the fight they'd inspired, for the community that had emerged stronger on the other side. Sometimes the best stories start with the simplest moments. A snow day, some puppies playing, one person refusing to back down, and everything that comes after when you choose to stand firm in what matters. This was my story, our story. The story of how puppies playing in snow brought down a corrupt HOA, built a community, and reminded everyone involved what actually mattered in life: not perfect lawns, not matching mailboxes, not undisturbed snow, but love, connection, freedom, joy. And the courage to fight for those things when they're threatened. The dogs stretched and yawned, ready for their evening walk. I grabbed their leashes, stepped out into the January evening, and smiled at the snow-covered neighborhood that had become my home. Our home. A place where puppies could play in snow, where people could live without fear, and where an officer asking to book a puppy visit had become the symbol of choosing what was right over what was easy. Life was good. The fight was over. And the snow was perfect for playing in, which was all that really mattered in the end.